The Forgotten Hospital. The old St. Elora Hospital had been abandoned for decades, but nobody in town dared to go near it. Rumors whispered of strange lights flickering in broken windows at night and eerie sounds drifting on the cold wind. Some said the hospital was cursed, haunted by the restless souls of children who had suffered there. I never believed in ghost stories until the night I went inside. Curiosity had gotten the better of me. I was an urban explorer, drawn to forgotten places and the stories they held. The locals warned me, but I ignored them, thinking it was just superstition. The hospital's front doors were chained shut, but I found a rusted side entrance and slipped inside under the cover of darkness. The air inside was thick with decay and something else, something heavy and dark that pressed on my chest. Broken equipment and crumbling walls surrounded me. The silence was deep, but it felt alive, as if the building was watching. I moved cautiously, my flashlight cutting through the blackness. Downstairs, I found the way to the basement, the old ward where the children had been kept. The story said it was a place of horrors, cruel experiments, screams silenced by cold steel doors, and children who never left. As I descended the stairs, my heart pounded, but I pressed on. In the corner of the ward, I saw it, a small room, its door ajar, revealing rows of empty cribs and rusted restraints. The air smelled faintly of old medicine and something sour, like forgotten tears. A sudden cold breeze brushed past me, carrying a whisper, a soft, chilling voice barely audible. "Help us!" I froze. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. Then from the shadows a figure appeared, a small girl, pale with dark circles under her eyes. Her dress was tattered, stained red in places. She looked right at me, eyes empty yet filled with sorrow. "They won't let us go," she said, her voice a broken whisper. I wanted to run, but my legs refused to move. The walls seemed to close in, and the whispers grew louder, more desperate. I realized then that this hospital held more than memories. It held trapped souls crying out for release, and somehow I had stumbled into their nightmare. I fled, the girl's voice echoing in my mind as I scrambled out into the cold night. But even as I left, I knew this was only the beginning. The hospital's secrets were far darker and deeper than I could imagine. And whatever haunted St. Elora was waiting for me. After that night running out of St. Elora Hospital, I thought I would finally find peace. But that peace was just an illusion. A few days later, the first signs began. Faint footsteps echoing in empty rooms when I was alone, soft sighs drifting through closed windows, and at times the unsettling feeling of being watched, even though no one was there. I started recording everything. Strange noises captured by my phone's microphone, photos taken in the dark where shadowy figures appeared just at the edge of the frame. Every time I reviewed the recordings, I saw a vague shape, a little girl in a tattered red dress, standing quietly in corners or at the foot of the stairs. Was this the same girl I saw in the basement? The ghost haunting St. Elora? On the third night, as I tried to sleep, whispered voices filled my ears, pleading, "Help us! Help us!" I jolted awake, heart pounding, searching the darkness for the source. But there was only silence, heavy and cold. I knew I couldn't live in fear like this, but my curiosity burned even brighter. Who were these children? Why were they trapped here? And why was I drawn into this terrifying story? Determined to find answers, I returned to the hospital during the day, hoping to uncover new clues. Inside the basement room filled with rusty cribs, I discovered an old diary hidden beneath a pile of decaying papers. Its cover was wrapped in faded red cloth, worn and smelling of mold. With trembling hands, I opened it. The pages were filled with messy handwriting, sometimes smudged, chronicling the experiments of a doctor named Vernon Yarrow, who worked at St. Elora in the 1960s. He detailed psychological experiments on children meant to unlock supernatural abilities. But gradually, the experiments turned nightmarish as children began to vanish, and desperate cries echoed throughout the hospital's walls. The last page ended with a shaky sentence. "They are imprisoned in the dark, and now they cannot leave. I fear I have unleashed something uncontrollable." A chill ran through me. Everything I had heard and seen was confirmed in those pages. I was diving deeper into the darkness St. Elora had tried to bury forever. For days I couldn't sleep, The diary of Dr. Vernon Yarrow lay on my desk, its red fabric cover seeming to pulse in the dark like it was alive. Every time I tried to ignore it, my dreams dragged me back to that basement ward. The cold iron cribs, the soft sobbing of unseen children, the girl in red staring with hollow eyes. One night, as I stared at the pages again, I noticed something I had missed. Tucked between two torn sheets was a drawing, roughly sketched in pencil, childlike, yet terrifying. It showed a door, not just any door, but one painted completely red, with black handprints smeared across it. Underneath the drawing were just three words: "Don't open it." I didn't remember seeing any red door during my visits, but now I had to know. The hospital was calling me back. The next morning I returned to St. Elora under a gray, overcast sky. The building loomed like a corpse of stone and steel. I slipped through the same rusted side entrance and crept through the rotting halls. Everything was eerily quiet, even more so than before. The air felt thicker, as if the building itself recognized me. I searched every hallway, every floor, until I descended once more into the basement. The dim beam of my flashlight flickered as I passed the children's ward. Then I saw it. At the far end of a corridor I had somehow missed before. A door, deep red, standing alone at the end of the hall, covered in black smears exactly like the drawing. My feet moved before my mind could stop them. With each step closer, the air grew colder. The whispers returned, louder this time, desperate, chaotic. "Don't! It's not real! Help me! He's coming!" I reached out and touched the door. It was warm. Not just warm, hot, like the door was alive, like it was breathing. Something on the other side pulsed with a presence that felt wrong, but I was already in too deep. I turned the knob. It creaked open into complete blackness. The moment I stepped inside, the door slammed shut behind me. The world changed. The air inside was chokingly thick. My flashlight flickered and died. But the room wasn't entirely dark. A faint red glow illuminated the walls, which were covered in drawings. Hundreds of them, children's crayon scrawls. Some showed stick figures crying. Some showed people strapped to beds. Others showed dark, twisted shapes watching from corners. And then I saw them. Children. Dozens of them, pale, translucent, with sunken eyes. They stood in silence, watching me, not blinking. In the center of the room stood the girl in red. "You came back," she said, not as a question, but a statement. Her voice echoed oddly, like it was being spoken from deep underwater. "What do you want?" I asked. She tilted her head. "It's not what we want, it's what he wants." Behind her, something began to crawl out of the shadows. A figure impossibly tall, with two long limbs and a face that shifted like melting wax. Its eyes were hollow voids, and its mouth opened far too wide. The children didn't move. They just watched. The girl turned to me again. "You opened the door. Now he's awake." I stumbled back, grabbed for the door, but it was gone. The wall was smooth, solid. There was no way out. The door had vanished. Where it had once been, there was now only a smooth, cold wall. My heartbeat pounded in my ears as I pressed my hands frantically against the surface, hoping it was just an illusion. But it wasn't. The exit was gone. Behind me, the girl in red stood silently, her head still tilted, eyes fixed on me with a strange calmness. Around her, the other children remained motionless, staring. The tall, shifting figure continued to emerge from the corner. Inch by inch, limbs stretching unnaturally, joints bending the wrong way. "I didn't mean to open it," I whispered, my voice trembling. "But you did," the girl replied softly. "Now he's awake, and once he's awake, he doesn't sleep again." The air in the room grew heavier, pressing against my chest like a weight. My breath came in shallow gasps. I stepped back instinctively, and the moment I did, the figure's head snapped toward me. It didn't move like a person, more like a spider, legs bending, neck cracking as it turned. Its eyes were pits of writhing darkness, and when it took a step forward, the walls seemed to shudder. I stumbled backward into a child who didn't react, only blinked slowly, as though I wasn't even there. The girl in red moved toward me. "You have to hide," she whispered. "You have to forget. Forget what? I asked, backing away. She didn't answer. Instead, she reached up with her tiny hand and touched my forehead. The moment her fingers met my skin, a jolt surged through my body and everything around me dissolved. I was no longer in the red room. I was standing in the middle of the hospital's main hallway, daylight pouring in through the shattered windows. My flashlight was in my hand. The red door was gone. Had it been a hallucination? But my hands were shaking, my shirt drenched in sweat, and worst of all, my phone was missing. The phone I'd used to document everything. I searched my pockets, my bag, every inch of the hallway. It was gone, as if it had never existed. Worse yet, the drawings. I saw them again, scribbled across the peeling walls of the hospital now. Stick figures, black smears, crying faces, red crayon scrawls of a door. I hadn't imagined them. I fled the building. For weeks after, I tried to move on. I avoided the hospital. I told myself it was over, but it wasn't. The nightmares came first. Dreams of the red room, of children surrounding my bed, whispering secrets I couldn't remember when I woke. Then the voices, during the day when no one else was around, soft whispers echoing my name. I started seeing things, shadows out of place, faces in reflections. One morning I found a small red crayon on my pillow. I never owned a red crayon. And then came the final sign. Late one night, I came home to find the front door of my apartment slightly ajar. I stepped inside cautiously, the hair on my arms rising. Everything seemed untouched, but when I entered my bedroom, my blood froze. There, drawn on the wall in thick red crayon, was a door. A tall door with black handprints smeared across it. Below it, in childlike handwriting, were the words, "You opened it." Now it follows. The drawing on my bedroom wall stared back at me, impossible to ignore. A crude red door smeared with black handprints, identical to the one in the hospital. My knees weakened, and I dropped onto the edge of my bed, staring at it, heart hammering in my chest. I hadn't told anyone what I saw in St. Elora. I hadn't shared the diary, the drawings, or the nightmares. No one knew. So how could this be here? How could that same door follow me? That night I didn't sleep. Every creak of the apartment made me flinch. I kept the lights on and clutched a kitchen knife like it would protect me from whatever this thing was. But the lights didn't help. Around 3:12 a.m., they flickered once, then went out entirely. My apartment was swallowed in darkness. And in that darkness, I heard it, scraping, slow, deliberate, from the hallway. I got up, tiptoed to my door, and listened. The sound grew louder, closer, dragging against the walls. I held my breath. And then, it stopped. I reached for the doorknob, but before I could touch it, a low, guttural whisper came from the other side. "You can't run!" I fell back, heart slamming against my ribs. I didn't dare open it. I didn't even move. I waited there, back against the far wall, until the first gray light of morning bled through the window. When I finally opened the door, the hallway was empty, but carved into the floor, deep scratches etched into the wood, were 3 long claw marks, stretching from the elevator straight to my door. I knew then that I couldn't stay. I packed what I could and left. Not just the apartment, but the city itself. I needed distance from St. Elora, from that red door, from everything that had started this nightmare. I drove north to a small town where no one knew me and rented a tiny cabin off the main road. I didn't use my real name. I didn't leave a forwarding address. I didn't even keep a phone. I wanted to disappear. For a while it worked. The air was quiet. My nights were dreamless. The fear started to fade, but it was never really gone. One morning I woke up to find something on the front porch. A child's drawing. Torn, rain-soaked, pinned under a rock. It was of me, standing next to the red door. That same day I saw her again. The girl in red, across the street under the trees, just standing there watching me. She didn't move. She didn't blink. I closed all the curtains, turned every mirror around, and tried to pretend I hadn't seen her. But that night something changed. I dreamt I was back in the red room. The children circled me, whispering louder than ever. The tall, faceless creature loomed behind them. But this time, they weren't warning me. They were blaming me. "You let him out," the girl said. "And now he's hungry." I woke up screaming. My body was ice cold. I couldn't breathe. On my bedroom wall, scrawled in red crayon, were new words. "He remembers you." I realized something horrifying then. Running hadn't helped. Distance didn't matter. I had been marked. The red door wasn't just in the hospital anymore. It was in me, and it was getting closer. I stopped counting the days after a while. In the cabin, time bled together, sunrises and sunsets like empty brushstrokes across a canvas of fear. Every time I opened a window or door, I half expected to see the red door standing somewhere nearby, waiting. I began hearing whispers inside the walls. At first I thought it was just the wind or the creaking of old wood. But it wasn't. These weren't random sounds. These were words. Faint, distant voices calling my name, begging, accusing, chanting. "Come back. He's still with you. She's waiting." They came mostly at night, just as I was drifting off. I'd hear a giggle from beneath the floorboards, or a low chant echoing through the vents. One night I even heard a knock, 4 soft taps, coming from inside my closet. When I opened it, there was nothing but my suitcase, zipped tight. I thought maybe I was losing my mind. To test myself, I began recording. I placed a small voice recorder by my bed and let it run through the night. In the morning, I would play it back. At first, there was only static. Then one night at exactly 2:39 a.m., I heard a child's voice whisper, clear as day. "Why did you leave us?" I dropped the recorder. My blood went cold. Later that week, I found something carved into the wooden headboard of my bed, a crude sketch of the red door. Below it, the words, "It opens from both sides." That same night, the dreams returned. I saw the hospital again, but not the ruined, abandoned shell I'd explored. This time, it was alive. The halls gleamed with fresh white paint. The smell of antiseptic and sickness lingered in the air. I walked through it like a ghost, invisible to the nurses and orderlies, moving in slow, silent patterns. Then I found myself standing outside Ward B13. I had never seen this wing before. The door creaked open on its own, revealing rows of hospital beds. Children lay on them, pale and still, each strapped down by thick leather belts. At the far end of the room stood Dr. Vernon Yarrow. He was older than I'd imagined, with deep, sunken eyes and a tremble in his hands. He was writing in a journal, the same red one I had found in the hospital. I moved closer. He didn't look at me. He just muttered, "It's too late now." I tried to stop it, but the girl, she made a deal. I tried to ask what he meant, but my voice was gone. I reached out, and suddenly he looked up, straight into my eyes as if he could see me through the dream. "You shouldn't have opened it," he whispered. Then everything exploded into darkness. I woke up on the floor, soaked in sweat, my nose bleeding, and something else had changed. The red crayon drawings. They had started to appear outside the cabin, on trees, on rocks, on the bark of the fence post. Each day more appeared, little figures drawn beside the red door. One of them looked exactly like me, and each time it was standing closer to the door. The children hadn't just followed me, they were watching. And worse, he was still coming. The forest surrounding the cabin had always been a place of reluctant safety for me, quiet, isolated, untouched. But after the drawings started appearing on tree trunks, I stopped going outside. I kept the windows covered, the doors locked, and lights on day and night. It didn't matter. One morning after another restless night, I noticed something strange. The cabin, my supposed safe house, had changed. A door now stood at the end of the hallway, where no door had ever been before. It was old, slightly ajar, and painted a familiar deep red. I didn't want to approach it. Every part of me screamed to ignore it, to pretend it wasn't there. But curiosity mixed with dread, and I found myself moving toward it, my hand trembling as I reached for the handle. Inside was a room I had never seen. It was sterile. The walls were tiled, white and gray, and the overhead light buzzed faintly, flickering in and out. At the center of the room stood a rusted hospital bed, restraints dangling from its sides. Above it, a single security camera pointed downward, its red light blinking. I stepped inside, heart pounding, unable to understand how this could be part of my home. Then I saw them. Handprints, small, childlike, smeared along the walls in crimson streaks, and on the bed, a red journal, identical to the one I found at St. Elora. I picked it up, flipped it open, and saw a new page written in uneven handwriting. She brought him here. Before I could turn the page, I heard the voice again. Low, ancient, not human. You're not supposed to see this yet. The light overhead burst in a shower of sparks. Darkness swallowed the room. I ran, slamming the door behind me, breathing hard. When I turned back to look, the door was gone. The hallway stretched on as it always had, the same faded wallpaper and creaky floorboards. But I knew what I had seen. I still held the red journal in my hands. That night, I sat on the floor of the kitchen and read every page. Most were illegible, scratched out lines, stains, and symbols I couldn't decipher. But some passages stood out, rambling confessions from Dr. Yarrow about the experiment, the vessel, and the deal made in blood. It all pointed to one thing. The girl in red had not been a victim. She had been a key, a gateway. He described her as willing, a child who, after enduring unimaginable trauma at the hands of her caretakers, had opened herself to something ancient, something waiting beyond the veil of death. The Red Room is not a place, he wrote. It is a promise. After reading that line, I dropped the book. My skin prickled. A sudden wind blew through the cracks in the walls, and in the silence I heard a child giggling. Inside the house, I turned slowly toward the bedroom. My door stood wide open. Inside, standing just beside my bed, was the girl. She didn't move, didn't blink. Her eyes were darker than I remembered, two voids that saw too much. In her hand, she held a red crayon. She began drawing something on my wall again, a door. This time, when she finished, she turned to me and smiled. "He's almost here," she whispered. "He's so excited to meet you." I didn't sleep that night. I didn't move. I stayed frozen on the kitchen floor, my eyes fixed on the bedroom where the girl had stood just moments ago. She had disappeared without a sound, just as she always did. But the drawing she left behind remained. The red door was now etched onto my wall in thick, waxy crayon lines. Beneath it, a row of stick figures. One was unmistakably me. Black scribbles for hair, an X drawn over the face. I tried to wash it off, scrubbed until my fingers bled. But it wouldn't fade. It was as if it had been burned into the wall. That was the first time I noticed the mirrors. Every reflective surface in the house had changed. The bathroom mirror, the microwave door, even the darkened window panes at night. Whenever I glanced at them, I saw something else. Something wrong. Not just my reflection, but something behind me. At first, it was only in the corners of my eye, a shape, a flicker, a movement just out of reach. Then it became clearer. A figure, tall, faceless, wrapped in shadows like rotting gauze. It stood behind me, unmoving, in every mirror, watching, always watching. One night, as I brushed my teeth, the bathroom mirror fogged over from the steam. When I wiped it clean, the thing was there again. But this time, it was closer, its hands pressed against the inside of the glass. Behind it, I could see the red door glowing faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. Then I heard the whisper again, not in the room, not in my head, in the mirror. "He's already inside." I stumbled back, knocking over the trash bin, heart racing. I grabbed a hammer and shattered the mirror. Shards rained down across the tiles. For a second, I felt relief, until the shards began to move. Each piece, each sliver of glass, twisted and shifted until they reflected the same thing, the red door, and behind it, dozens of eyes, children's eyes. They blinked in unison, then vanished. I fled the bathroom and locked the door. I didn't care if it made sense. I didn't care if it was madness. I just needed to put something, anything, between me and whatever was breaking through. I tried calling someone, anyone, but my phone, which I had kept turned off for weeks, had turned on by itself. The screen was covered in static. Every time I tried to make a call, the screen glitched and showed the red door again, just for a split second. Then I received a voicemail. No number, no name. I listened to it. It was a recording of my own voice. "I opened it," I was saying between heavy breathing. I didn't mean to. I didn't know what it would do. Please, he's watching. He never sleeps. He's in the mirrors. Don't let him. The message cut off with a scream. My scream. I dropped the phone. Later that night, I caught movement outside the cabin. I peeked through the blinds. They were there. The children. 10, maybe 12 of them. All standing in a circle around the cabin, holding hands, motionless, staring straight at the walls. Their faces were smudged, shadowed, their bodies flickering like static in an old VHS tape. In the center of the circle was her, the girl in red. She raised her hand and pointed, right at me. And suddenly all the mirrors in the house shattered at once. The sound was deafening. When the silence returned, I saw it. In every jagged reflection, the red door was open, and something was crawling out. I don't remember falling asleep. Maybe I didn't. Maybe I blacked out. Or maybe the house itself decided I shouldn't be awake for what came next. All I know is when I opened my eyes, I wasn't in the cabin anymore. I was back inside the hospital. But this time it was different. The decay was gone. No broken tiles, no bloodstains. The lights flickered, yes, but everything was clean, intact, and silent. Terribly, unnaturally silent. No wind, no buzzing of electricity, just the hollow echo of my own breath. I walked down the corridor and every door I passed had a name etched on a bronze plate. All of them children. Names I didn't recognize, until I found one that made my stomach drop. Hannah Reeve. The girl in red. The door creaked open as I reached for it, revealing a small, cold room, a single bed, a child's desk. Crayon drawings taped to the walls, some colorful, innocent. Others, not. One drawing showed a red door with black flames beneath it. Another showed a man without a face, arms outstretched, surrounded by children drawn in thick red. Then I saw the journal. Her journal. I opened it, trembling. The pages were written in shaky handwriting, childlike but intelligent. The early entries were mundane. Complaints about food, loneliness, the nurses. But later, it turned darker. They said I'm not sick, but I see things they don't. Dr. Yarrow comes at night. He says I'm special. He says I'm the key. The thing in the mirror talks to me. It says it can make the pain go away. It promised I wouldn't be alone anymore. The final page was just a drawing. The red door, wide open, and behind it, a void. I backed away, heart hammering in my chest. But when I turned around, the hospital was gone. I stood now in front of the real red door. It wasn't drawn. It wasn't a hallucination. It was real, solid, ancient. The paint was peeling, and the wood looked scorched around the frame, like it had survived a fire that wanted to consume it. Something on the other side breathed. I tried to run. My feet didn't obey. The door began to open. There was no light beyond it, only darkness so dense it looked like a solid wall. And from that darkness came the sound of chains dragging across the floor, a deep growl, children weeping, and then a voice, not loud, not shouting, just a whisper that tore into my mind like broken glass. You came back, as you promised. A hand reached out, long, thin, inhuman. It stretched toward me, and the space around me twisted and bent, like reality couldn't hold itself together. Then came the scream. Not mine. Heron, the girl in red. She lunged out of nowhere, standing between me and the door, her arms outstretched as if to shield me. She turned her head slightly, just enough for me to see her mouth. Run! And suddenly I was back in the cabin, collapsed on the floor, gasping for air, blood dripping from my ears. The cabin lights flickered violently, and every wall was now covered in the same drawing. The red door, the shadow beyond it, and me, my stick figure, getting closer to it each time. But I understood something now. The girl wasn't the threat. She had been a vessel, a child tricked into opening something too old, too hungry. And now she was trying to stop it, trying to stop him. But he was getting stronger. And the door, it was opening faster now. I tried to leave the cabin, I really did. Packed a bag, grabbed the keys, got into my car. But the road was gone. Not blocked, not erased, just wrong, as if space itself had twisted and the world outside my cabin no longer obeyed natural laws. I drove straight for 30 minutes, but every landmark repeated itself. The same fallen pine tree, the same broken sign, the same rusted gas pump. Worse, the fuel gauge never moved. The world outside was looping, and the cabin, it was calling me back. When I returned exhausted and numb, the red journal was waiting on my kitchen table. Open to a page I hadn't read before. The handwriting wasn't the girl's. It was sharper, more precise, calculating. The vessel resists, but resistance only sharpens the blade. The children were nourishment, but the vessel offered an invitation. He requires more now. The hunger grows. The house is becoming ready. The last line chilled me to my marrow. Tonight, the feeding begins. That night I noticed the sounds, scraping beneath the floorboards, breathing in the walls, whispers echoing through the vents, not in English, but in something older, primal, and the smell, decay, rot, metal, like a slaughterhouse had settled beneath my floor. At midnight, I was drawn to the basement. I don't remember deciding to go. One moment I was curled up in a chair with a flashlight. The next I was standing at the top of the basement stairs holding a candle. The door creaked open on its own. The air grew colder with every step down. Not a natural cold, but wrong, like stepping into a grave that had been disturbed. The basement was deeper than it had ever been. The stairs spiraled endlessly downward, the candlelight barely reaching the damp walls. After what felt like an hour, I reached a landing, and there it was, a door. Not red this time, black, slick with something oily that pulsed like a heartbeat. Above the door, etched into the stone, were words I couldn't read, but I understood them. Those who enter, feed him. I opened the door and found the feeding room, a massive circular chamber, its walls lined with empty beds, hospital beds, rusted and stained. Chains hung from the ceiling. The air buzzed with static, like the inside of a dying television. In the center of the room, a pit. I stepped closer. Inside were bones, hundreds of them, children's toys, bits of clothing, and at the bottom something moved. Then I heard them, the children. They emerged from the shadows, pale, faceless, their bodies flickering like broken film. They formed a circle around me, their heads tilting in unison. And then she appeared, the girl in red. Her dress was torn, her eyes hollow. She looked older somehow, worn by something far beyond her years. "You weren't supposed to find this yet," she whispered. "What is this place?" I choked. Her voice trembled. "Where they brought us. Where he eats." "Who is he?" I demanded. She looked down into the pit, and from it a voice rose. "You know me." The walls shuddered. The air turned thick, heavy, vibrating with sound too deep for ears to hear. Something was rising. I could feel it clawing its way up the sides of the pit. "You have to wake up," the girl said. "What?" "You're not in your world anymore. You never were. Since the moment you saw the first drawing, you've been in his." She looked at me with sadness, and then slowly began to fade. "Run," she whispered. "Run and remember who you were before the door." The floor split open. Hands, thousands of them, reached out, pulling at my legs, my arms, my face. I screamed as I was dragged downward, and just before the world turned black again, I saw it. His face, or rather, the absence of one. Where a face should be, there was only a mirror. And in the reflection, I saw myself smiling. But it wasn't me. When I opened my eyes, I wasn't sure I had ever closed them. I was no longer in the feeding room. No bones, no chains, no pit. Just silence and a thick, suffocating fog that blurred the world into shades of gray. My limbs felt numb, like they didn't belong to me. My thoughts were slow, submerged beneath layers of noise. But the worst part? I was not alone. There were mirrors, dozens of them, suspended in the mist, floating, drifting past me like memories with weight. Each one reflected a version of me, younger, older, terrified, broken. Some smiled when I didn't, some cried when I felt nothing, and one, just one, stood still and stared directly back at me. Not a reflection, not a copy. It was him, the mirror man. His body was a tangle of limbs, shifting and stretching like smoke. His face, though, his face was mine, perfectly mine, except the eyes were glassy, hollow, devoid of any soul. And when he opened his mouth, I heard my own voice say, "You were always meant to stay." I ran, through the fog, through the mirrors, each one shattered as I passed, releasing sounds that weren't glass but screams, tiny, childish screams. I didn't know where I was going, only that I had to move, to outrun the thing wearing my face. The fog thickened, turned red, then black. Then I found myself in a hospital corridor again, but now it pulsed, as if alive. The walls breathed. The floor oozed with something sticky and warm. Lights flickered, not from electricity, but from veins that glowed beneath the ceiling like exposed nerves. At the far end of the hallway stood the door. The door. The red door. But this time it was cracked open, and something inside was calling. Not shouting, whispering, persuading. I stepped closer, and the hallway began to shift. The names on the doors changed. No longer children's names. They were mine. Over and over. 100 doors, all marked with my name, all whispering different moments from my life. Failures, fears, secrets no one else knew. I passed one and heard my mother crying. Another, my voice yelling in anger, a memory I'd buried deep. Another, silence. I reached the red door. My hand trembled as I touched it, and that's when I felt the cold hand on my shoulder. He stood behind me, the mirror man. I didn't turn. I didn't have to. I felt his breath against my neck as he spoke. Every part of you you've denied, I've kept. And now you're hollow enough for me to wear. I opened the door. Inside was a room, a single bed, a mirror on the far wall, just like the hospital rooms I'd seen before. But this mirror didn't reflect the room. It reflected a life, my life. Me at a desk, typing. Me walking through a park. Me watching TV in my apartment. Me sleeping. And then it changed. The mirror showed me waking up, stretching, smiling. But that wasn't me. It was him. He had crossed. I was still in the hospital, trapped between mirrors and breathing walls, and he was out, wearing my face, living my life. The girl in red appeared behind me, her eyes dim, voice hoarse. "He fooled you, like he fooled all of us." I turned to her, desperate. "How do I stop him?" She looked at the mirror. "You don't. You can't kill what's already wearing your skin." "But what do I do?" She stepped closer, and for the first time, I noticed the scalpel in her hand. "You become what he fears, the thing that never lets go." She handed me the blade, and then she vanished. I looked back at the mirror. The version of me, of him, was laughing now, with my mouth, my teeth. I raised the blade and stabbed. The mirror shattered and the walls screamed. The room turned inside out, and the last thing I heard was a voice, my voice from somewhere outside the glass. "It's my turn now." When the mirror shattered, I expected darkness. But instead, I awoke to light, fluorescent, sterile light that buzzed faintly above my head. I was lying in a hospital bed, covered in thin, stiff sheets. The walls were white, clean. The air smelled of disinfectant, sharp and chemical. Machines beeped softly near my ears. For a moment, I thought, maybe it was all a nightmare. Maybe I had finally woken up. Then I looked to my left. Another bed, occupied. The figure in it was covered head to toe in gauze, unmoving except for the eyes, wide open, staring straight at me. Eyes that were identical to mine. I jerked upright. My heart pounded so loud it drowned out the beeping machines. I looked down at my hands, still scratched, blood-stained, not from this world, not clean, not free. The room had no door, only a window looking out into a long hallway bathed in red emergency light. And beyond that hallway I saw them, the children, standing silently in a line, watching, their faces blurred, eyes black voids. Their presence wasn't hostile. It was mournful. as if they were waiting for something, or someone, perhaps for me. I banged on the glass, shouted. No one came. Then the lights in the room flickered, and the figure in the bed sat up. The gauze unraveled slowly, like hands pulling away from a gift no one wanted to open. Beneath the bandages was not flesh, not even bone. It was a mirror, a perfect, polished surface where a face should have been. I saw myself again. Not just my face, but my reflection, my every movement copied perfectly, like a cruel mockery. I stepped back. It stepped forward. I raised my hand. It raised the scalpel now resting in its own. Where had the scalpel come from? I didn't remember holding it again. The mirror me stepped closer, and when it opened its mouth, it didn't speak. It screamed. A noise so sharp, so inhuman, it cracked the glass around the observation window. The walls bled from the seams. The ceiling tiles melted into black sludge. Then the walls disappeared completely, and I was back in the hospital again. Not the sterile one, but the real one. The original one. Abandoned, rotting, hungry. The lights here barely worked. Water dripped from broken pipes. The walls were covered in symbols, those strange red runes I had seen in the children's drawings, pulsing faintly as if alive. I wandered the corridor, the echo of that scream still ringing in my ears. Then I saw her, the girl in red. But this time, she looked different, older, taller, her dress soaked in something dark. She didn't move. She didn't speak. She just pointed to a door at the end of the hallway. The maternity ward. I knew without explanation that I had never gone inside, until now. I pushed the door open, and it was full of cribs, hundreds of them, all empty, except one. In the center of the room, bathed in a soft red glow, was a single crib, and inside it was me, a newborn, silent, eyes wide open, watching me. I wanted to back away, to run, but something held me in place. I was shaking. The infant didn't cry. It simply smiled. And then it spoke, not with a baby's voice, but mine. The adult version. You invited him in the moment you questioned your past. I stepped closer. What are you? The baby giggled, then its eyes turned black. I'm your beginning. Then the room twisted again. The cribs disappeared. The walls peeled away. The floors dropped out from beneath me. And I was falling endlessly through layers of the hospital. Past surgeries gone wrong. Hallways that looped. Rooms where patients screamed with no mouths. I landed in the morgue, cold, silent, and there in the center of the room was a body covered with a white sheet. A tag dangled from its toe. I stepped closer and read the tag. Patient U. The body beneath the sheet moved. The sheet twitched as if something underneath was struggling against invisible bonds. My breath caught in my throat. The sterile cold of the morgue seeped into my bones, chilling me to the core. Slowly the body shifted. Pale fingers slipped from beneath the sheet, curling like roots reaching for the earth. The face emerged, not dead but hollow, like a mask pulled taut over nothingness. Yet those eyes, they were unmistakably mine, dark, empty, and endlessly sorrowful. I wanted to turn away, to flee, but my feet were glued to the floor. Then the eyes blinked, and a voice whispered, fragile but clear, remember. The word echoed through the morgue like a chant, a command, a plea. I felt it reverberate in my skull, stirring forgotten memories buried beneath years of pain and silence. Suddenly, the room around me shifted. The morgue dissolved into the dimly lit corridors of the abandoned hospital, but this time the halls were different, less decayed, more alive. Echoes of voices floated in the air, faint and distant. I followed the sounds, each step stirring dust and shadow. Doors creaked open as if inviting me inside, revealing fragments of the past. A nurse humming softly, a child's laughter, a doctor scribbling notes with urgency. And then I found myself standing before a small room labeled Records. Inside, dusty files and faded photographs covered a desk. I rifled through the papers, heart pounding. Among the documents, a worn folder caught my eye. It bore my name. Hands trembling, I opened it. Inside were medical reports, notes about experiments, treatments, and Most disturbingly, mentions of a procedure called the vessel. The reports described children who had disappeared from the hospital over decades, taken as subjects in twisted experiments aimed at harnessing something unexplainable. The final entries detailed a patient who was marked Subject Zero, a child who never left the hospital, whose presence lingered like a shadow, and beneath it all, a chilling note in scrawled handwriting. The vessel is the key. Only through him can the hunger be sated. My head spun. The weight of the truth pressed down on me. I wasn't just trapped here. I was part of this nightmare. The whispers grew louder, surrounding me, wrapping around my mind like chains. The girl in red appeared beside me again, her eyes soft but urgent. "You've remembered," she said. "But there's more. Much more." She reached out, and suddenly I was falling backward, through layers of memory and shadow. I saw flashes, my own childhood, strange visits to hospitals, unexplained scars, and voices I couldn't place. I saw the moment everything changed, the moment I became the vessel. As I fell deeper, I realized the true horror. I was never a victim who stumbled into the hospital. I was born from it, created by it, bound to it. And now the hunger was awakening. The moment I understood my true origin, the hunger inside me stirred, a cold, gnawing void that spread through my chest like icy fire. It wasn't just a feeling. It was a presence, a force demanding to be fed. I stumbled forward, the hospital twisting and turning with every step, the walls closing in like a cage. The whispers had turned to murmurs, then to voices, pleading, angry, desperate. The children. They were everywhere, their faces pressed against broken windows, their hands reaching through cracks in the walls. Their eyes begged for release, for salvation. But I knew the truth. Release meant feeding the hunger. The girl in red appeared again, standing beneath a flickering light. Her voice was calm but unyielding. "The hunger was never yours alone. It belongs to all of us, trapped, waiting for someone to break the cycle." I looked around, heart pounding. The hospital was no longer just a building. It was alive, a beast with 1,000 eyes, 1,000 voices. Its corridors pulsed with dark energy, drawing me deeper into its belly. And then I saw it, the heart of the hospital. A vast chamber, hidden beneath layers of concrete and shadow. The walls glistened with something wet and cold. At the center, a pulsing mass of black tendrils twisted around a glowing core, a heart beating with unnatural rhythm. The hunger. It reached out with tendrils that grazed my skin, sending shivers of pain and longing through me. I felt it trying to merge with me, to take over completely, but I resisted. Drawing on the fragments of myself left unclaimed, I raised my hand, trembling but resolute. "No," I whispered. "You will not control me." The tendrils recoiled, screeching like dying stars. The girl in red stepped forward, placing a steady hand on my shoulder. "You are the vessel, but you are also the key. Only you can end this." I swallowed my fear and reached into the heart of the darkness, fingers brushing against the glowing core. It was cold yet alive, pulsating with centuries of pain and rage. With all my strength, I squeezed. Light exploded. The chamber shattered, the tendrils screaming as they unraveled and dissolved into nothingness. The hospital shook, walls crumbling, shadows fleeing. And in the silence that followed, I felt it. The hunger was gone. For now. But the girl in red looked at me with sorrowful eyes. "The hunger never truly dies. It only waits." As the hospital fell silent, I understood the truth. Some nightmares never end. They only change shape. The ruins of the hospital lay quiet, bathed in the cold light of dawn. The shadows that once haunted its halls had faded, replaced by the fragile glow of morning. For a fleeting moment, I believed it was over, that the hunger, the darkness, had finally been banished. But deep inside me, something shifted. A whisper, soft and distant, echoed through my mind. "This is not the end." I stumbled out of the collapsing building, the weight of years pressing down on my shoulders. The air outside was crisp, carrying the scent of rain and earth. Yet I felt nothing but exhaustion, a hollow ache that no sunlight could heal. As I walked away, the girl in red appeared once more, standing beneath a withered tree. Her eyes were filled with both hope and sorrow. Every story has an end, she said softly, but some endings are just beginnings in disguise. I wanted to ask her what that meant, but her figure began to fade like mist under the morning sun. The hospital behind me was nothing more than rubble now, a monument to pain, secrets, and forgotten souls. Yet I knew the truth buried beneath the debris. The hunger was still alive, waiting patiently for the next vessel, the next story. I looked down at my hands, scarred but steady, the mirror shattered, the children's eyes, the endless corridors. None of it was gone. It had become a part of me, woven into the fabric of my existence. And somewhere deep inside, the hunger stirred again, quieter this time, but relentless. Because some darkness never truly dies. It only waits. And so do the stories.